All right, and we are good to go.
All right. Do we know? Well, I see the mayor's online.
Mayor's on.
Okay, great. Let's call the meeting to order. And Councilman Shaid, if you bring a few words, please.
Thank you, Councilmember Waring. And as a matter of personal privilege, when we started off the Public Safety Committee meeting, we talked about 9/11, and which we commemorated, not celebrated. We commemorated the 20th anniversary of that very fateful day. And I shared with folks that a lot of the commentary and events that occurred over the weekend pointed out not what happened so much on the 11th of September, but it also pointed out what happened on the 12th of September. And we have been moving forward since the 12th of September onward with how this country has responded to those acts of cowardness and terrorism, for the lives lost and the 343 members of the New York Fire Department that perished, saving other people's lives. It's a testament to the human spirit. It's a testament to our country that we do put service above self sometimes. And so what I'd ask everybody to do at this particular moment is to reflect upon our heroes of 20 years ago and the survivors and the families of those who perished and families of those who survived that terrible day. That we look forward to hope. We look forward to unity, and we look forward to the grace that God gives us every day. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Council. Approval, well, minutes being deferred. We skip down to item E, acceptance and delegation of rights of way. We got some pretty important rights of way on here. E1. Let's just take them one at a time. E1.
Okay. Chairman Waring, Chip McQueen is going to handle those. He's been working very hard with us on those. I'm going to let him go ahead and describe those to us.
All right, Mr. McQueen, you're up.
Yes, sir. I'm going to pull up the plats because they're a little bit tough to read online sometimes. Let me share my screen. And, or excuse me, the ones that are in your package are sometimes tough to read. The first one is we're going through the dedication process now. I'm trying to streamline it a little bit so we can get the deeds and easements recorded as soon as possible after the plat's recorded. So we do have a few things to take care of with the dedication, and that's why I put it subject to approval of the final dedication package. But the plat shows West Edge Street. Here, this would be Lockwood, and Spring would be down here. The District Drive and I can't remember the name of this one. Oh, Horizon Street. So those are the rights of way we're being asked to accept. And then there's I can see it, the drainage easements run across separate properties lying right here. And those are to serve the roads, but we accept those as well. The dedication from the Medical University of South Carolina for the roads, they own all the roads. It's complicated, but as many of you know, there's a 99-acre landfill in this area. There's a top on it, a cap on it, and the city used to own it, so you can't really, there's not very good protection from under CERCLA or other environmental laws. The developer has capped it, and they're transferring title subject to the restrictive covenants imposed by the Department of Health and Environmental Control that are typically required. That should not impact, that won't increase or decrease city liability. I just want you all to be aware of it. It's not something we need to do. I've talked to Sean Flug, who's our environmental attorney. It shouldn't be an issue, but it's something that's required to be included in any deed after those restrictions are put on the property. And I'm happy to answer questions about that one. That's the only one that's really got a lot of intricacies to it. The second subdivision plat is crossing at Verdier. This is used to be called the Henry Kuznick tract here, but this is can you all see the new plat that I pulled up?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. You can see the former site was owned by Henry Kuznick along Bees Ferry Road. And this is sort of that little corner up here. It's a subdivision, and we're being asked to accept the roads and drainage easements therein. Again, normal plat approval process would be followed. I'll move on unless anybody has questions. The third and fourth items are in the Crescent subdivisions. Councilor Appel will be very happy about this. We're accepting easements from the owner of 26 Broughton Road, and it's shown on this plat, and 19 Johnson Road, which is over here. That's part of the stormwater drainage improvement project happening in there. I don't know if Matt Fountain's on the line, but he can explain. If anybody needs details about what that accomplishes, I would ask him. I usually just do the paperwork and tell him what. I don't ask him why he wants the easements. I just do the paperwork for the easements. The fifth item on your agenda is another 30-foot drainage easement. This is it's called the Wildwood Townhomes. It's in what used to be called DuPont subdivision. I'm not sure what it's called now, but this is Dunbar Street. This is where the West Ashley Greenway, owned by CPW and leased to the city, and the bike path owned by the city meet. The drainage easement is down here. This is another, I believe, drainage improvement project. I don't think it's related to the development. This is the old bowling alley here, but if anybody has questions about any of these, I'm happy to answer.
All right. I think Councilman Appel can almost explain items 3 and 4 himself. He's had pretty good tutelage on those easements, which were highly sought after. I saw Mr. Mayhar on the line. I suspect all of these going to pass unanimous. Mr. Mayhar, you have anything you'd like to contribute? All right, great. Chair, entertain a motion on these.
Second.
Probably moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Item F, Mr. O'Brien, any temporary encroachments that stick out like a sore thumb that we should know about?
No, sir. Basically, we got mainly encroachments for irrigation, fencing, and a couple of tie-ins to catch basins, but all of them have been inspected and recommended for approval, and we received those to y'all for information.
Thank you so much. Item G1, amendment to the Building Inspection Division third-party inspection program policy. And who's going to address that? Mr. Mayor.
I had a question on the temporary encroachment.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Tom, there were 2 of these I don't see very often. The first one at 10 Limehouse Street was installation of a drainage pipe below a sidewalk, and then number 12, 32 Council Street, was installation of a stormwater system into a catch basin. I just find it curious that we say both of these encroachments are temporary. They sound kind of permanent to me, but maybe that's just the nomenclature. But do you mind just kind of
No, sir, be happy to.
sharing
Both of
the
these,
insight?
yes, sir. Both of these are situations where the house, both those houses in question, they've had drainage, and sometimes it's been drainage that's come across the sidewalk as a sheet flow, but they're trying to tie in. A lot of it deals with wet grounds and property. So what they're trying to do is catch it in a catch basin on their property and take it by.
Uh-oh, you muted there in the midst.
Just muted, I'm sorry. But they go into the back of our catch basins, and what we do is we always try and check with stormwater, with Matt's guys, with Kendrick and everybody, just to make sure that first of all, the volume of water they're adding to catch basins can hold and withstand it. So it's kind of rare, like you say, but we do have these come up on occasion.
Okay. So basically, we're letting a private property owner just tie more directly into the drain
Yes, sir.
system as opposed to
That's
going out
correct.
on the street.
Yes, sir. And they just, a lot of times they're going underneath the sidewalk from their private property and tying into the back catch basin.
And could I ask Matt Fountain, generally speaking, does that help improve drainage or make a difference, or it's just for that one property owner, or?
It depends, Mayor. I mean, I'm not familiar with these off the top of my head, but typically this is when it's a private property owner draining like an under drain or their front yard into the public system. So it's typically just that yard.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moving on to, I gotta-
Item G.
yeah, item G, I'm sorry, G1.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Fountain, who's gonna address that?
That's going to be Sterling and Ken Granada and Gary Pope from our building division here, but I think Sterling's going to take the lead to explain what we're trying to do.
Ms. Halverson, you're up.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. We received this request from the city's Building Inspections Division to make some changes to the existing third-party inspection program that was first adopted back in 2015. This program was intended to take some of the burden off of city staff inspectors to help expedite projects where the inspections were necessary on holidays or outside of normal working hours or just when there's a general backlog. But the program never really got off the ground because the bonding requirement, which was included in our policy, has turned out to be cost prohibitive to the third-party inspectors who want to participate. The third-party inspection companies generally get paid around like $1,000 for an inspection job, but the bond cost is about $750. So we've had a lot of feedback from these third-party inspection companies who have requested that the city consider waiving or removing this bonding requirement that we had in the policy. We've had very little participation, if no participation in the program. And so it sort of defeated the purpose of the adoption of the program in the first place. The Building Inspections Division is requesting that bond requirement be removed from the policy to allow for more participation by these companies. From legal's perspective, we feel like we have adequate liability coverage for both the city and the homeowner through the insurance requirements that we require in a different section of the policy. We actually require general liability insurance coverage in the amount of $1 million, with the city being named as an additional insured. And then we also require professional errors and omissions coverage in the amount of $1 million. We did do a lot of due diligence on this. I know Ken Granada has been working with some of the third-party inspection companies to sort of get a survey of the companies, the requirements that other municipalities have, what requirements that these companies are used to as far as insurance versus bonding. And so far, all of the information that we've received back is that none of the other municipalities have been requiring bonds. It's only the insurance requirement, and that they usually, always include the city as an additional insured. So we do feel that this change will be beneficial to the city and the building department because we can really start utilizing the third-party inspection program and really get it off the ground if we can remove that bonding requirement. One more thing about the bonding requirement is that it's really there to ensure performance by the contractors. But it makes sense in a large contract that might go on for many months for a big building. But in this situation, they're really just doing one inspection per job. And so, they can finish that maybe in a few hours or a day. And there's really no need to have that insurance of the performance for the long term. Our current policy requires the bond to go for a year. And like I said, it's just cost prohibitive. If for some reason the third-party inspector couldn't perform the job on that given day, the city's own staff inspectors could always jump in and finish the job. So we're not as worried about the performance insurance. We're just worried about the liability insurance, which is what we have already under the policy. And then I'll add one more change that they're requesting is that we allow the third-party inspectors to conduct the foundation inspections. That is permitted under the South Carolina Building Code, but under our policy, we required that to be city staff only. But I believe that the foundation inspections requires a lot of work, and it sounds like it's something that could really help the staff out if we could let some of the third-party inspectors do those jobs as well as the other types of inspections that they're currently allowed to do. And I'll defer to Ken if he has any corrections or additions.
Mr. Granada, any input?
No, thank you, Sterling. Appreciate the synopsis. Yeah, just to reiterate, as Sterling mentioned, when we first came to y'all back in 2015 to launch the program, just like today, we had an array of projects, whether it be commercial buildings or large tract development home projects that were time consuming, either for us to go out and do in volume or scale, or as Sterling mentioned, with the foundations in and of themselves. These type of projects move very rapidly. The large mixed-use buildings that are typically done out of reinforced concrete, formwork, bless you, and based on their timing, they're going early in the morning, late at night, weekends, daily on some of these, and it can be a challenge for us to keep up with their requests, though I think we do a pretty good job. In the surety bond piece, really has been a roadblock for anybody, whether it be single family, because it's per building, by the way. So for single family, it was it was cost prohibitive for them to do that. And on large projects, maybe not as much, but the time piece, the year after the completion of the project was another piece no one wanted to take on. And lastly, I'll just say this whole program, third-party inspection program, is by request. It is not by right. They have to come to the chief building official and request it. And I review and consider the project and our work schedule and our workloads and the project itself, and before we approve it. So this isn't something that they can just take on and do and circumvent us. And lastly, I'll say all these inspectors are certified, as our inspectors are certified through the state. So I'm comfortable and confident, and we get to review all of those inspector resumes as well before they go on to the project for our comfort level.
Any input? Any other questions? What's been said? You're muted, Councilman Shade.
Yeah, so Ken or Sterling, what's been the track record so far of this program? Has it been sort of kept up a sort of a running log on how this has worked so far?
We have. It's been zero practically because of the surety bond piece. It's been a very easy tracking the project. So for 2015, there were a few agreements. We didn't really have a program in place, and we allowed some of those to continue, even though the program, because they had been approved previous to the program. But I think in 2018, we decided that was enough's enough on those projects, because they were kind of continuing other projects that weren't really approved. So once essentially under this program with the surety bond piece, there hasn't been one, though we've had plenty of asks, but once we show them that surety bond piece, no one takes it any further.
That's a pretty direct and easy answer to follow. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, any more questions? We have a motion.
I still move.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Item H1, Forest Acres, Mr. Fountain.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So item H1, excuse me, is recommend a approval of a fee amendment with Thomas and Hutton. This is in the amount of $445,400. And it is to add work into the contract for the construction administration, construction inspection, record drawings for phase 2 of the project. So basically the CEI work associated with phase 2 of the project. We are reallocating some leftover funding as part of this from amendment 4 and 5, so that we're only adding an extra $188,827.54 into the project budget to cover this work. This is, again, work that was originally budgeted within the project. It just hasn't been added into the professional services contracts at this point. The reason we're adding it in at this time, of course, is we're expecting to start construction on phase 2 by early 2022.
Any questions? All right, we have Chair entertains the motion.
I'll
So
move
moved.
forward.
Motion kind of hard to come by here. Properly moved, and I think,
I'd mute myself, Mr. Chairman, otherwise I would have been right on that for you. That's,
all right,
that project affects both you and I in our respective districts. So
I
it's,
know, I know.
it's very important and just, you know, I hate to comment on this stuff, but we've seen what we voted on already, the work of Mr. Fountain's department and how this stuff is moving forward. So
I tell you, one thing on here, funding is coming out of 2012 stormwater bond. Let me tell you, that's a bond that keeps on giving. I can't tell you how many
Yep.
major projects we've paid out of that bond. Properly moved and seconded. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. H2, Mr. Fountain, Church Creek.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is recommended approval of fee amendment number 2 with biohabitats in the amount of $680,600.
Excuse me, Mr. Fountain, I already got a motion on the floor, so let me entertain the
Oh, I'm
motion.
sorry.
Move for approval. You have a second out there?
You got a second?
Properly moved and seconded. Now, Mr. Fountain, continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is to add the final design, permitting, property acquisition services and contract documents for 3 of the 4 projects within this larger flood storage area within the Church Creek project basin. So last meeting, we added in the smallest of the projects, which was sort of the quick start project on Mowler Court. These are the 3 larger projects, sub-projects, the Bridgepoint Ecological Park, the Wolk Drive project, and then the Crosstown Church Area Mid-Basin Storage Project. This is, again, the funding for this project comes from both the Drainage Fund and then the 2 National Fish and Wildlife Foundation grants we have for matching funding.
Okay. Any questions of Mr. Fountain on this? Councilman Griffin.
Yes, sir. And Mr. Chairman, I got booted off there for a second, but I voted yes on item A on this topic as well. This is just a great day for Church Creek, and we're moving in the right direction. Going back and creating a lot more storage in those areas that need it the most. And hopefully that's going to allow houses and properties that have flooded out previously to never flood out again. So this is a great.
Couldn't agree with you more. Any more input on this one? This is a long time coming. Thank you, Mr. Fountain, on this. Carry the motion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Again, ayes have it. H3, flood.
I'll move approval.
management. It's been moved, and do we have a second out there?
Second.
Probably moved, seconded by Councilman Shahid. Mr. Fountain, any input on this?
Mr. Chairman, this one is just basically a support contract for the floodplain group. We had Mr. Jolka resign from the city, so we're just making sure that as we transition between floodplain managers, that we have technical support and assistance. As our current certified floodplain manager for the city is our stormwater MS4 program with Mr. Jolka resigning. So it's just that making sure we don't lose capacity as we kind of transition again between 2 different employees.
Okay. All righty. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Somebody said nay? Was it a nay?
No.
Okay. All
Oh, yes. Yes.
oh, yes.
Unanimous.
Unanimous.
Had a little distortion there. Okay. All right. It passes unanimous. Now, miscellaneous item, we've got a discussion on an ordinance to adopt regulation on routine inspection and maintenance of private septic tank. I know this is an issue that's near and dear to the heart of Council Lady Jackson and a lot of people on James Island, PSD as well as CWS. Who's going to lead off this discussion? Mr. Fountain, are you up on this one?
I can, Mr. Chairman. I think I can certainly lead it off for discussion purposes.
Okay, let's do that.
So I believe there's been some discussion at the James Island Creek TMDL kind of work groups on different ordinances that both Folly Beach and James Island have passed regarding septic tanks. So one of the concerns, of course, with water quality in a TMDL watershed that's basically contaminated with fecal coliform. We use Enterococcus as the signifying bacteria for saltwater areas, but a fecal coliform issue, of course, is the concern about leaking septic tanks or failed septic tanks. There's been some work with the task force group to identify properties that are likely to have septic tanks, and that's been work between CWS and the PSD of figuring out basically who has sewer accounts and who doesn't, and narrowing down which properties they expect to be served by septic. There are not a huge number of these within the city. It's a relatively small group on James Island, but it is an area where the town, the city, and the county have all been looking at options for how to find ways to help bring these tanks into better operation and maintenance, let's say, so they're not sources of contamination. There are a few different ways to do this. DHEC technically regulates septic systems, but they don't generally do follow-on inspections after the original permitting of the sites. I shouldn't say they don't generally. They do not do follow-on inspections after the initial permitting of the sites. One of the common ways, which I believe is what Folly Beach does, is sort of a point of sale compliance, where at the time of a home sale, basically, there's an inspection requirement to make sure that the septic tank is functioning properly. That's a relatively popular option, similar to some HUD style grant or community assistance grant programs where point of sale is revenue being generated. So it's an easy time when revenue is being generated to enforce a requirement like that. I believe the town of James Island has looked at doing one where they would actually require like an every 3-year or so inspection cycle. And require basically the property owner to inspect their tank and make sure their tank was fully functional. That's certainly more protective from an environmental sense. It's also more of an obligation on the homeowner. The upside and downside of that, again, is the protection is the upside, the potential downside, and the reason that generally perhaps you don't see DHEC inspecting these as carefully is that you tend to run into certificate of occupancy issues with failed septic systems because you don't have a way to treat your discharge. So there's a higher burden there that if someone is unable to repair their tank, what you do at that point. The county does have a community assistance program where they will help people who are financially disadvantaged with septic tanks within the county. I don't think the area of the city that might be served by septic is likely to have much of that, but it's certainly always a concern with septic systems. And then there certainly are education outreach opportunities that are very important to do to septic tank owners, because many people just don't understand what they should be doing with a septic tank, because if you live in the city, it's not something you're used to thinking about or dealing with necessarily. So that's my kind of quick overview. I think what we're looking for at this point is for some input from the committee on what level of involvement the city might want to take. If we think something like a point of sale is a good approach, or if we want to be more aggressive than that and say, no, this is a critical component. And then in the long term, probably looking for support for when there are opportunities to tie into sewer. I think there are some ordinances at the city already, and that I'd have to double check honestly, which I should remember, for requiring hookup when there's hookup available, basically when there is sewer service on your street. So those are all ordinance methodologies to try to improve environmental quality related to septic.
Thank you, Mr. Felton. But I think part of this, and I'm going to ask Councilwoman Jackson to have some comments. I know she has been very involved with an intergovernmental group involving James Island Creek over there, where you have a lot of runoff from, frankly, septic tanks that's contaminating that creek over there. CWS has been involved, James Island PSD, the town has been involved, as well as the city, trying to come up with a solution for all over there. I personally will take CWS's lead because they know more about sewage than anybody in this region that I know of. But Councilor Jackson, do you want to have some input here?
Thank you. I really do appreciate the recognition, and I think, to have beginning input from Public Works is fabulous in terms of, just sort of setting some direction. But frankly, after hearing from CWS and you as well, council member, as our city's board member there, I thought that we were going to sort of delay this
Okay.
opportunity. We do have a lot of input to collect. And the good news is, in terms of city properties that currently have septic that are known to be potential contributors to the toxicity of the James Allen Creek, watershed basin that we're all trying to improve. We do have a very minor number. So I would be very happy to, hear anything that you all are thinking about in an early discussion like this, but I don't think we should be pursuing trying to establish an ordinance. I sent it around because the town of James Allen City Town Council did give it a first reading, their version of the amendment or the ordinance, which is what I think you have in front of you. And it was great to have an example. Town of Folly Beach has done the same. They have a whole different set of conditions, obviously, being on the barrier island. But the more that we can sort of make ourselves blend into the strategies and the methodologies that our jurisdiction, neighbors are taking on, I think we'll continue to have the reputation of being a very cooperative partner in the intergovernmental mix on James Island. And, it's true up in West Ashley with St. Andrews District as well. So I'm happy to be able to give you all this opportunity, but I certainly wouldn't expect any action out of this committee.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Mayor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I did want to share with the committee that in addition to the regular intergovernmental council on James Island that includes most of our local jurisdictions on James Island, that I chair, but it was really teed up by Councilmember Jackson, the James Island Water Quality Task Force, which includes all those same jurisdictions, but even more, that are all concerned about cleaning up James Island Creek. So she's really done a great job, and I just want to give her that gold star. Now, Councilmember Appel also serves on that group, and he's head of the subcommittee on policy. So, I'm glad that the James Island Public Service District and the town, or if you will, on this issue, taking the lead. And then that's appropriate because they have more homesteads and properties that have septic systems, much more than we do. But I do think that as they get theirs into place and we see that it's working or not working, we can adjust a little bit accordingly, that we should be consistent with them, even though we might have a much smaller number of septic tanks in the city. I think we should have the goal of being on the same page with the town and the county all together, no matter how many systems we have in our city limits. Councilmember Appel, does that make sense?
It absolutely does, and I appreciate your kind remarks there, and also Councilwoman Jackson's leadership on this issue. And I like to boil down the problem. It's a simple problem. It's a simple solution that's complicated due to the multi-jurisdictional issues that we face. I mean, the bottom line is, you just can't be on a failing septic system in South Carolina Low Country in the days of rain bombs and sea level rise and things of that nature. That's no way to run a railroad. I mean, James Island is not the James Island of the 1940s. It's a developed urban area, and we need to get as many people on sewer as possible. And if you're not going to get on sewer, you better well clean out your septic tank. Nobody has a right to put their own human waste into our waterways. That's the bottom line here and what we're talking about. And, with this multi-jurisdictional challenge that we've got, certainly, Mayor, we got to have consistency with the way that we're attacking these issues. But I think the one thing I would add to this discussion today is let's not lose sight of the ultimate solution here, which is finding creative ways to get sewer to the various homes that are located in this basin. And we've already made some really great progress. And Councilman Waring, to your point, CWS has been outstanding. I mean, we asked them to, analyze the situation. They came forward with maps showing the city properties versus unincorporated county versus town. Here's where the sewer is. Here's where the septics are. I mean, that was the first step in, for us as a policy matter, figuring out who's got to do what, right? We got to understand where the problem is before we address it. But also, I think Mayor Woolsey's done a great job of, bird dogging some federal funds and talking with, the local legislative delegation about maybe trying to get some money out of Columbia for some of this work. This is an all of the above solution approach that we need to take, because this is a real problem. It's a shame that we've got a TMDL designated waterway on James Island. That's just awful, and we need to find ways to get the problem solved. So thanks to everybody involved, and I think we're making good progress. We got to keep going. Thanks.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, could I just add one thing for everybody to know? Thanks. In this whole intergovernmental sets of responsibilities, on paper, DHEC is supposed to be the investigative, enforcing agency of septic use. And their budget was stripped, I guess, back in the recession, and it's never been put back to really be able to do that function. It's their function on paper. So we can't really even point fingers at our, stakeholder partners at DHEC. And I do think that is sort of setting a whole nother new, aspect of this, is that it's great, to wait for the state, but we have to take some actions on the local level. So it's been a very good learning curve exercise for all of us. And I think that in itself will stand the test of time.
Okay, well, I certainly appreciate all the leadership on this. That's a subject that you can forget about, Septic tanks are over there, and sewer lines continue to spread throughout the city, and going back and getting people connected. I certainly, want to thank all of you all for the intergovernmental communication. That part is actually part of the strength. My understanding is some of the landowners are actually homeowners who have had these septic tanks over the years. Obviously, they need to get on board, because there's going to be some, right now, they don't pay a stormwater fee. There's no electrical charge for them to run their septic tank and subsequently drain pipes. So they're going to have to pick up some additional costs for the solution. So whatever we can do, if you know somebody live in that area, and say, hey, I know it's going to cost a little bit more, but it sure would be good if you hook in. We got to find a way to market that to them as well. Because I agree, everybody pushing in the right direction. Hopefully the PSD and maybe the town will get some monies out of Columbia to help pay for that. Those houses, about 200 houses or something like that. So get connected. But anyway, it was a subject, Councilor Lady Jackson, you were spot on in that our Public Works Committee needs to be apprised of it, however you want to say that. So it won't be a foreign subject when it comes back, I'm sure, at another time. Any more on that subject? Any more new business to come before the committee? And I want it to be noted that as part of this committee, it's 4:47, and we have concluded the Public Works agenda for the day. Keeping pace with real estate that finished on time as well.
I think you beat them.
I'm sure we did, but anyway, we all did it within 60 minutes.
Little competition between the two chairmen, Mr. Mayor.
Nothing wrong with that. Good competition. All right, well, by acclamation, we stand adjourned, and we'll look forward to seeing everybody.